After the first family had grown, after children spread across the land, after the earth that was once silent became filled with life, humanity faced something it had never seen before. Something heavy. Something dark. A crime. Not against strangers. Not between enemies. But within the same blood. Between two brothers. Allah tells us in the Qur'an, and recite to them the story of the two sons of Adam. Surah Al-Ma'idah, 5:27. A story not just to be heard, but to be understood. Because this was not just their story. It was the beginning of something that would repeat, again and again, throughout human history. Two brothers. Raised under the same roof. Raised by the same parents, Adam and Hawa. Taught by the same father, a prophet of Allah. Guided by the same message. They lived in the same world. Walked on the same earth. Shared the same beginnings. Yet their hearts were not the same. Because guidance is given, but hearts choose. One of them was sincere. His heart was soft, humble, connected to Allah. He understood that life was not about himself, but about pleasing the one who created him. The other carried something different, something hidden at first, but growing quietly inside him. Jealousy. Not loud, not obvious, but dangerous. Because jealousy does not stay small. It grows. It whispers. It changes how a person sees others. It turns blessings into comparisons. And comparisons into resentment. And slowly, it begins to consume the heart. Then came a moment of test. Both brothers were commanded to offer a sacrifice. An act of worship. An act meant to bring them closer to Allah. But not every action is accepted. Because Allah does not look at appearance. He looks at sincerity. He looks at the heart. One of them prepared his offering. With care. With humility. With intention. He gave what he valued. Seeking nothing but the pleasure of Allah. The other gave without that sincerity. He offered something, but his heart was not present. His intention was not pure. And then, the result came. Allah accepted from one, and not from the other. And in that moment, a test began inside the heart of the one who was rejected. A moment that could have been a turning point. A moment to reflect. To correct. To return. But instead, it became something else. A spark of darkness. He did not look at himself. He did not ask, "What did I do wrong?" He looked at his brother. And something twisted inside him. Jealousy turned into anger. Anger turned into hatred. And hatred spoke, "I will surely kill you." Words that had never been spoken before in human history. Words that carried destruction. But the righteous brother responded. Not with anger. Not with fear. But with truth. Indeed, Allah only accepts from the righteous. Surah Al-Ma'idah, 5:27. He reminded him. This was not about him. This was about Allah. About sincerity. About righteousness. And then he said something even more powerful. Something that shows the strength of his heart. If you stretch your hand to kill me, I will not stretch my hand to kill you. Indeed, I fear Allah. Surah Al-Ma'idah, 5:28. He chose peace. Even when threatened. He chose patience. Even in danger. He refused to let darkness enter his own heart. Because true strength is not in overpowering others. It is in controlling yourself. But the other brother was no longer listening. His heart had already begun to close. When jealousy takes over, it blinds. It makes wrong feel right. It makes evil feel justified. And step by step, he allowed it to grow. He thought about it. He held on to it. He fed it. Until it became action. Allah says, then his soul permitted him to kill his brother. Surah Al-Ma'idah, 5:30. Not suddenly, but gradually. His own soul convinced him, made it seem acceptable. And then, it happened. For the first time in human history, a life was taken. A brother killed his own brother. The earth witnessed something it had never witnessed before. Silence fell. A silence heavier than anything before. The wind carried no comfort. The land held no peace. Because something had changed. Something had been broken. The sanctity of life had been violated. And the one who committed it stood there. Not in victory, but in confusion, in emptiness, in regret. Because sin never gives what it promises. He thought it would remove his anger. But it didn't. He thought it would bring satisfaction. But it didn't. Instead, it left him lost, broken inside. And now, he faced something new. The body of his brother, lying before him, still, lifeless. Something no one had ever seen before. What do you do with death? When death has never existed in your experience? He did not know. He stood there, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to fix what he had done. Because some actions cannot be undone. Then Allah sent a sign, a lesson. A crow appeared, scratching the ground, digging into the earth, burying another dead crow, showing him what to do. And in that moment, he realized something painful. He said, woe to me, am I unable to be like this crow and bury my brother? Surah Al-Ma'idah, 5:31. Even a small creature knew what he did not. And he felt shame, deep shame. But even that could not undo what had happened. And Allah says, he became among the losers. Surah Al-Ma'idah, 5:30. Not just in that moment, but in what he had become. Because the greatest loss is not what you lose in this world. It is what you lose within yourself. And this moment changed humanity forever. Because this was not just a crime. It was the beginning of something. The beginning of violence. The beginning of injustice. The beginning of a struggle that would continue through generations. And the Prophet Muhammad later taught that every unjust killing after this carries a share of sin back to the first one who started it. Because he opened the door. A door that should never have been opened. And Adam, the father of humanity, felt the pain. Not just as a father, but as a prophet. He had taught them, guided them, warned them. And yet, one of them chose darkness. And this is the reality of human beings. Guidance can be shown. Truth can be clear. But the heart still chooses. And this is why this story matters. Because it is not just about them. It is about us. Jealousy still exists. Anger still exists. Pride still exists. And the same path still exists. A path that begins small, but leads to destruction. Unless it is stopped. Unless the heart returns. Unless the soul is corrected. And this is the lesson. That actions begin in the heart. That sin does not start big. It starts small. A feeling. A thought. a comparison. And if it is not controlled, it grows until it becomes something that cannot be taken back. And so, this was the first crime. The first breaking of something sacred. And it left behind a lesson, a warning, a reality that humanity would carry forever. But even in this darkness, there was still something else. A truth that remained. That no matter how far a person goes, the door back to Allah is still open. But not everyone chooses it. And that is the test. After the first crime, after the earth witnessed something it had never witnessed before, humanity was no longer the same. Something had shifted. Not in the, but in the hearts. Because when a sin is committed, it does not end in that moment. It leaves a trace, a door. And that door, once opened, is not easily closed. The killing of one brother by another was not just an isolated event. It was the beginning of a pattern. A pattern that Shaitan had been waiting for. Because long before this moment, he had already made his promise. I will surely mislead them all. Surah Sad, 38:82. And now, he saw his opportunity. Not in strength, but in weakness. Not in power, but in hearts. Because Shaitan does not force. He whispers. He does not push. He suggests. He does not appear as an enemy. He appears as a voice inside. A thought. A feeling. A justification. And this is how corruption begins. Not loudly, but quietly. Not suddenly, but gradually. Allah warns in the Qur'an. Do not follow the footsteps of Shaitan. Surah An-Nur, 2400 hours 21. Not one step, but footsteps. A path. A slow journey away from truth. And humanity began to walk that path. Step by step. At first, the changes were small. Almost unnoticeable. A slight shift in intention. A moment of forgetfulness. A distraction from remembrance. Nothing that seemed serious. But enough to begin a change. Because Shaitan knows something very important. He knows that humans do not fall all at once. They fall gradually. So he begins with what seems harmless. A small distraction. A small desire. A small delay in doing what is right. And over time, these small things begin to shape the heart. The gatherings of people began to change. What once centered around remembrance began to include distraction. What once brought hearts closer to Allah began to pull them slightly away. Not completely, but enough. Enough for the heart to feel different. Because the heart is sensitive. It changes. It is affected. And when it is not protected, it drifts. Some people remained firm. They remembered Adam. They remembered the lessons. They held on to sincerity. They guarded their hearts. But others began to follow their desires more. Not out of denial, but out of neglect. And there is a difference. Because denial rejects truth. But neglect forgets it. And forgetting is dangerous. Because when you forget, you stop resisting. You stop questioning. You stop returning. And slowly, what once felt wrong begins to feel normal. This is how Shaitan beautifies actions. He makes wrong look acceptable. He makes sin look attractive. He changes perception until the heart no longer sees clearly. Allah says, and shaitan made their deeds pleasing to them. Surah Al-Anfal, 8:48. This is the trap. Because once something looks good, you no longer fight it. You accept it. And once you accept it, it grows. This is how corruption spreads. Not by force, but by acceptance. Not by compulsion, but by normalization. And generation after generation, this pattern continued. Some people held on to truth. Others drifted further. And the distance between them began to grow. Not just physically, but spiritually. Hearts became different. Intentions became different. Goals became different. And the world began to reflect that. Because the condition of the world is always a reflection of the hearts within it. When hearts are pure, the world feels light. When hearts are corrupted, the world feels heavy. And humanity was now entering a phase of a test, not just of actions, but of hearts. Who will remember? Who will forget? Who will resist? Who will follow? And shaitan continued. Patient, consistent, never rushing, but never stopping. Because he knows time is not his enemy. He works slowly, carefully, until the becomes visible. Until the change becomes real. Until humanity begins to move further and further away. And yet, even in this, the door of return remained open. Because Allah's mercy never disappears. No matter how far a person goes, the path back is still there. But the question is not whether the path exists. The question is, who will choose it? And so, humanity moved forward. Not in a straight line, but in a struggle. A constant tension between two calls. The call of truth and the call of shaitan. Because from that moment, the battle was set. Not a battle of strength, but a battle of choice. Every human being stands in that space between guidance and misguidance, between light and darkness, between remembering and forgetting. And shaitan never stopped. His mission did not end with Adam. It did not end with the first sin. It continues with every generation, with every heart, with every moment of weakness. He whispers, not loudly, but persistently. He does not command. He suggests. He plants ideas. He creates doubts. He encourages delay. Not now, later. Just this once. It's not that serious. And these small thoughts shape decisions. And decisions shape lives. But Allah did not leave humanity alone. He sent guidance, reminders, signs, warnings. Because the purpose of life is not perfection. It is awareness. Awareness of right and wrong. Awareness of choices. Awareness of consequences. Allah says, indeed, we guided him to the way. Surah Al-Insan, 76:3. The path is clear. But the choice belongs to the human. Some choose truth, even when it is difficult. Even when it requires sacrifice. Even when it goes against desire. Because they understand something deeper. That this life is temporary. But the result is eternal. Others choose differently. Not because they are forced, but because they follow. They follow desire. They follow distraction. They follow what feels easy. And this is the difference. Because truth is not always easy, and falsehood is not always obvious. And this is why the test continues. Every day, in every moment, in every decision. The story of the two brothers was not the end. It was the beginning. A beginning of a pattern that would repeat across time. Different people, different places, but the same struggle, the same emotions, the same choices. And this is why this story matters. Because it is not history. It is reality. It is happening now. In different forms, but with the same essence. And the question remains. For every human being, which path will you choose? The path of sincerity, or the path of desire? The path of patience, or the path of reaction? The path of remembrance, or the path of forgetfulness? Because in the end, every choice matters. Every step matters. Every moment matters. And no matter how far a person goes, no matter how many mistakes they make, no matter how lost they feel, there is always a way back. Because Allah's mercy is greater than everything. And this is the greatest hope. That even in a world of struggle, guidance still exists. Truth still exists. And the chance to return still exists. And that is what makes this life meaningful. Choose differently. Not because they are forced, but because they follow. They follow desire. They follow distraction. They follow what feels easy. And this is the difference. Because truth is not always easy. And falsehood is not always obvious. And this is why the test continues. Every day, in every moment, in every decision. The story of the two brothers was not the end. It was the beginning. A beginning of a pattern that would repeat across time. Different people, different places, but the same struggle, the same emotions, the same choices. And this is why this story matters. Because it is not history. It is reality. It is happening now. In different forms, but with the same essence. And the question remains. For every human being, which path will you choose? The path of sincerity, or the path of desire? The path of patience, or the path of reaction? The path of remembrance, or the path of forgetfulness? Because in the end, every choice matters. Every step matters. Every moment matters. And no matter how far a person goes, no matter how many mistakes they make, no matter how lost they feel, there is always a way back. Because Allah's mercy is greater than everything. And this is the greatest hope. That even in a world of struggle, guidance still exists. Truth still exists. And the chance to return still exists. And that is what makes this life meaningful. If this story touched your heart, like this video, share it with others, and comment what lesson you learned, and subscribe to Faith Science. Because these stories are not just to be heard, they are to be lived.